So I was trying to find a piece of information to add to this topic, but I wasn't able to. And, that kind of sucks, but I can still do this without that. Little Light Studios. All of you who watch my channel should probably have at least some inkling of who they are, because I've been covering their Anime Exposed series, which I need to get back to doing. And I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get back to the next episode where they're concerned. Their stuff's just very exhausting to watch. That said, though, I do think there's a idea that they are pushing a little bit, and I want to use it as a springboard. So it's a tweet. I'll get to that in just a second. But first, the fan art section. So first we have this piece that is done by Atheist Mondo, and there's like 15 of these in there as they desperately tried to get the correct high-resolution version into the Discord. But YouTube compression would screw it either way. So thank you very much, Atheist Mondo, for the fan art. And then we also have one from Vulcan Vulpine. And they said, that squirrel looks familiar, because of what the alert box always spams up. So thank you all for your fan art submissions. As always, if you want your fan art to be shown in a future episode, the best way to do so is drop it into the Discord section. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. But we're going to hop right into the topic itself. This is not so much the focal point that I want to bring up. More so, this is about a mentality that I used to have. So let's go into the assumption that God is omniscient, he's omnipotent, and that's really all that's required for this particular setup. We don't need, omnibenevolent or anything else here. We just need 2 of those omni traits. So, Little Light Studios posts here on Twitter, sometimes God brings us through winters, these seasons, and it's not even about us. It's to help someone else in the future. So, is this a heinous tweet on its own? No, not really. But there's an idea that this communicates that I used to adhere to, and I want to talk about it. And I've talked about it in brief bits on my channel, but I think now's when I'm actually going to focus on it. Before I do so, though, Scrap Archivist, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an Ara Ara, you fucking monster. And SilverJ17, thank you very much for the follow. Alright. So, the idea that God brings you through winters, and sometimes it's not about you, it's to help someone else in the future. I used to believe this wholeheartedly. Obviously, I'm an atheist now, so it's not a thing that I believe insofar as I don't believe in a God, but when I was a Christian, this was an idea that I held on to, and it was an idea that I thought was comforting. So, content warning, we are going to talk about sexual assault, we are going to talk about violence, and we are going to talk about abuse. If those are 3 things that trigger you and you are not able to handle those things, completely understandable. But I did want to let you know that that is the discussion at hand. Also, Bear the Bay, thank you very much for giving me your points for an oh well. But let's talk about the logical end result of this idea, the one about God bringing you through winters, all this other fun stuff. So, if you are a Christian and you believe that every bad thing that happens to you is part of God's plan, then I'm going to present to you a scenario, and you are going to have to accept it as true, which means there's another logical end result that happens here. When I was younger and I was in high school, I had a friend who got sexually assaulted. They got drugged at a party, and halfway through the act, their brother ended up finding them, grabbing them, getting into a fight, and bringing them back home. And they talked to me about their assault. Now, my friend was an atheist. I was a Christian. Please note this was a much younger version of myself, and those of you who've been on my channel for long enough probably know this story already. But when I was having the conversation with them about what happened as they were coming to terms with their assault, I told them everything happens for a reason. I know this hurts, but God makes things happen for a reason. Sometimes it's to help someone else later on down the road, should it happen to them. Now, if you are a Christian, or have been a Christian, or know Christians, you've probably heard something similar to that, be it for any number of turbulent situations that you've gone and gone through in your life, right? Like, you've heard that at least once. The idea that you've come across some hardship, but God put it there for a reason. You've also probably heard the phrase that is used in conjunction with this: God isn't going to give you more than you can handle. That one's a different story altogether. But let's talk about this idea. This idea that I once believed, that if something bad happens to you, God did it for a reason. If you believe this, for one, it's cold comfort. It is not a real comfort to anybody that is hearing it. You need to be thoroughly indoctrinated into absolute bullshit to believe that that is comforting to anyone. Mind, I used to believe this, so I've been on the other end of that. But if you also believe that God puts these scenarios in front of people so that they can improve, then think about this. This means that God is responsible for your sexual assault. If God is responsible for your sexual assault, then, in effect, you were assaulted by God. No ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't matter that somebody else did it. What matters is that if God is all-powerful and all-knowing, He put someone there deliberately to do it to you. That, over and above the problem of communicating to somebody that, let's just call it what it is, their rape happened for a reason, and how gross that is, this now puts the person that they look to for comfort, their deity, this idea means that their deity was responsible for putting that on them in the first place. It also logically means that their deity is responsible for the next rape that happens down the line. If you take comfort, somehow, magically, or you think that somebody else can take comfort in the idea that a bad thing has happened to them so that they will be strong enough to handle that in the future if somebody else has it happen to them, that is a fine and dandy thing to believe without the deity. The idea that when a horrible thing happens to you, at least the silver lining is you're better prepped for it in the future, and somebody else will be better prepped down the line when you can give them the information that came from it happening to you, so that it doesn't happen to another person. But when you add the deity in, the deity is responsible for every instance of that happening. The only reason that you needed to be equipped to help another rape victim down the line is because God raped them too. And the only reason that they might need to help another rape victim down the line is because God raped the next rape victim. And the only reason that any of this happened in the first place was because God kept putting people in a position where they were going to assault other people. Now, if you want to strip some of the Omni traits away from your deity, then this might not necessarily be the case. You might say that God takes a step back and free will comes into play. But then, if everything is part of God's plan, then God planned on you being raped. If nobody could violate God's plan, then God planned on you being raped. God planned on that happening. And it just creates a disgusting position that you end up having to hold. And if you don't hold it, then it creates another problem. The problem of existential crisis. If you take this idea and you wrap your head around it thoroughly, and you come to the conclusion that, wait, no, then God is a monster. I don't want to worship that deity. If you accept that, then the secondary problem comes in. If you still believe in the other tenets of that faith, what happens when you abandon worshiping that God? Depending on the type of Christian you are, you might not be an once saved, always saved Christian. You might be faced with the choice between potential hellfire or being a monster on Earth and worshiping a monster. Not only have you hurt somebody by communicating an idea to them that necessitates their assault in somebody else's grand scheme, but as you are coming to terms with the fact that you have said that, the implications are you might end up putting yourself through a torturous hellfire. It astounds me, looking back 10, 15 years ago at the type of person that I was, and thinking that that is a thing that I communicated to another human being on this planet as an attempt to comfort them. It's okay that you got raped. It's part of somebody else's grand scheme. And somehow that deity was so uncreative that they could not conceive of the idea that their plan could have happened without you getting assaulted. I'm not bringing this up to tell Christians in my audience, deconvert now, Yahweh bad. I don't care if you deconvert. I don't. Not my goal here. My goal is to point out that this is something that I used to believe. So likely, statistically, if you're watching this video and you are a Christian, the thought that the hardship that's popped into your life has been presented there by God has at least been communicated to you once. And again, statistically, there's at least a couple of you who believe that wholeheartedly. And I implore you to please sit down and think about the logical end results of that belief, about the myriad of scenarios and slaughters and pain that ultimately the deity that you worship as an all-good being is responsible for. If you can find a way to wrap your head around it that doesn't involve communicating to rape victims that what happened to them is part of God's plan, then I'll have done my job. There will be at least a fewer people who will do what I did and hurt people the same way I did. And that's the least I can hope for with a video like this. Again, if you want to believe in a deity, fine. If you want to believe that hardships all happen for a reason, fine. But when you start weaving all of that together into a single cohesive narrative for a worldview, you come into these monstrous dilemmas. And it's not healthy. And it doesn't help other people when you communicate those same ideas to them as well. But I saw the Little Light Studios tweet, and it triggered that memory in my head right before this stream, so I wanted to go ahead and talk about that. Please don't tell a victim that what happened to them is part of God's plan. That is one of the coldest comforts and cruelest things you can tell them. My suffering should not be the price that I have to pay for someone else's random-ass grand design that I don't care about. And neither should yours. And nobody should think that way. But with all that said, if you got anything out of this topic, then let me know. Hit the like button, let me know in the comments section, any of that fun stuff. As always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. If you want access to behind-the-scenes content for the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. I do weekly vlogs over there, where I give real-life updates to what's going on behind the scenes on the channel, stuff that you don't really get over here, and even on Twitch. Patreon also helps the channel's stability a whole lot. Without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. Especially with the kind of content that I do, neither YouTube nor Twitch are the most stable sources of income. If you are a $20 and up patron, then you will be featured on the ending slides as shown in the beginning of the end credits. If you want to catch the streams where all this content comes from, then consider heading over to Twitch and following. And if you want to continue watching over here on YouTube, maybe consider clicking one of the end screen videos. And once again, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me over on my channel. I wouldn't be able to do literally anything that I'm doing over here on YouTube without each and every one of you. So, thank you.